We talk and talk about employee engagement and do complicated things to make a difference, but are we overcomplicating it? And what should we really focus on? Well, that's a discussion coming up today. And here we are on the HR Hub. You can listen to keep learning about this topic and all kinds of things related to HR. You can also find me on YouTube. And today, my guest is Debbie Pearmain. I met Debbie when she was facilitating a one-day course I attended on the topic. She was a refreshing and engaging. She's an experienced HR consultant and has been helping organizations improve their employee engagement and the employee experience for 25 years. Hi, Debbie. How are you?
I'm good. Andrea, so great to be here with you today. Looking forward to our conversation.
We're talking about engagement. The you have a very different way of talking about it, which is going to surprise people, I think. So let us very much start at the beginning. What is employee engagement to you? And I mean, obviously, I guess, why is it important?
Okay, great question. And I mean, I think it's really important that it doesn't matter what company you work for, that if you are in charge of employee engagement, that you have a clear vision of what it is that you're wanting to create. Because I think we can get really lost in all the bells and whistles and weeds
Yeah.
what people think it should be. And so, I mean, for me, when I say employee engagement, what I believe is we're trying to connect with the people who work for us at both a head level and a heart level. And so it's how do we go about doing that, right? How do you connect with people at a head level? How do you connect with people at a heart level? And whatever activities you then choose to implement, right? Your plan, your strategy, are they actually doing what it is that you're hoping they're doing? So, are you assessing all of those things that you're doing? And are you getting the results, right? So, are people saying they feel connected to you as a business, as a leader? Are people feeling, right, that they're connected to you up here? And we can talk about what does that mean? What does that look like? And here at the heart level, what does that look like?
Okay. So
Yeah.
let us just go there then. What does it mean to be connected at the head versus the heart?
Yeah, so good. So connecting with people at the head level would be all the things you're doing that connect with people intellectually. So what does that mean? That's your vision, right? That's your goals, your strategic plans, your objectives. That's things like job descriptions and right, just connecting with people at the level of I'm doing this job because I like the job I'm doing. It's actually stimulating. It's challenging, right? I see that there's some progression to what I'm doing. So then we just kind of springboard for a second ahead to if you're assessing if what you're doing is working, are you assessing all of those things? Because this is a big part of it. So often I see companies say, we do employee engagement. And then I say, let me see your engagement survey. And I'm like, you're missing half the categories in what you're assessing. So, whatever you say engagement is, you identify what helps you do that. So connect at the head level. Here's all the ways we do it. And then we make sure that we are measuring those actions, activities, and that they're actually working. We're getting the scores that validate that those things are working. So that's the head perspective.
Okay, the heart. I dwell on this because I think if you get people at the heart, then uh they don't live in their head so much. They get it, they are aligned, they're delivering it in the way you want to do that. I think at the heart level, it's connecting a lot to culture.
It is. And that's the big piece. That's my sweet spot, right? So beyond all these other things, strategies, systems, processes, procedures, goals, objectives, right? I'm going to say connecting with people at the heart level, and this is the majority of the 25 years of work that I've been doing. It's really moving beyond that stuff to this, are we a human-centered organization? So, do we form genuine human relationships? Are we honest? Do we have trust? Right? Is there some vulnerability? Is there psychological safety? Do we recognize and show people their value and their worth? So, do people who work here say they feel appreciated for their contributions and the work that they do? Is it sincere? Right? That's a whole nother question. Not just do you feel appreciated, but it's, do you feel that the appreciation is like meaningful and sincere? Are we leading with empathy? So do our leaders even understand empathy? Do they know that empathy is more than just like nodding your head and listening to people? It's the way in which you lead. It's the things you say or don't say. And then even just values, that's the last thing is values. So many companies, it makes me a bit, right? They have values, they're on the wall.
Yeah.
Nobody knows what the values are. And I do leadership training, and half the leaders can't remember the values. So clearly the values aren't living and breathing
Yeah.
in the culture, right?
Yes, that's true. I want to circle back. I have to ask, it's almost a pet question here. You talked about a human-centered organization, and yet our organizations are mostly, some of them are human-centered because their ultimate customer is a human. But how do you balance this idea that an organization is trying to get something done, and we have to create an environment where employees can thrive? Uh, and that to me is an exactly human-centered organization. I don't know if any of that made sense, but do you have any insight?
Yeah, I mean, I do get where you're going with this. So, of course, I do a lot of leadership training, as you know, and I actually speak to a lot of CEO groups, right? Through McKay CEO forums. And I'm constantly faced with that question from, presidents and VPs and business owners where they're like, we're in business, Debbie. Guess us. I get what you're saying, and we're in business. And so for a lot of people, their goal is to be successful and make money, right? And if that's your goal, then you're not a human centered organization. So, human centered organization for me is like it's balancing again, like the business needs with the needs of your people. And we know, right? So, I can give a bazillion stats on the benefits of creating engaging cultures, right? And to just help whoever's listening here to get the buy-in of their business owner or their leaders, because that's often the biggest struggle and the biggest challenge. I'm just going to say things like 17% higher productivity, 21% higher profitability, 87% higher retention, 41% fewer defects in products, 41% reduced absenteeism, 92% higher customer satisfaction. I'm almost done. 64% fewer safety incidences, 4 times higher revenue.
Okay, so
Help me out, Andrea. And these are, and then here's the best part. Then I get leaders who are like, "Well, who did the research? See the research." And I'm like, "It's from companies like Gallup and Deloitte and the Harvard Business Review and Quantum and the Society for Human Resource Management." Like, the stats speak for themselves.
I don't know.
So, I get that companies wanna make money, and what they're not getting is you're trying to get work done with people, not just machines and robots. And so there's a psychology to people. And really, what we need to be doing is teaching our leaders how to be good people managers because they have an 80% impact. on the employee engagement of your culture. This is not HR's responsibility. This is the leader's responsibility.
Damn.
So we got to understand the psychology of people. The majority of leaders don't even understand the psychology of people. So I go in and teach them right at the beginning, at the basics, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
Yeah.
You're working with people. Do you understand what makes people tick? And most of them are like, I've never heard it. Of course, they didn't take psychology. They didn't study what you and I have studied. But Andrea, I'm also shocked at the amount of HR folks who don't know Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's not something that typically is taught in even HR programs. Yeah,
We will get to Maslow's hierarchy of needs, which I have a question I must ask about that. But there was something you said in there. Oh yeah, you said that 80% of employee engagement is impacted by managers. Does that mean that the other 20% that we're spending so much money on and we're running around and we're doing all this engagement stuff and I don't know, maybe we're organizing pizza parties. Who knows what organizations are doing? Are you saying that's like a waste of time?
okay, I don't know if it's a waste of time because here's what I'm going to say 80% of engagement is leaders. And so it's what leaders are doing and not doing. Right. So leaders who show recognition, right? It's the leaders are the vehicle with which we action whatever employee engagement is. Let's begin at the beginning here. So the very beginning, Andrea, is physiological needs. So, how does that translate into a company? This is my question for the room of leaders. And they say things like compensation, right? Bonuses, benefits. And we say full stop. Let's compare that then to the stats that just came out last year about employers who are paying a living wage and employers who are not. And everyone's dead silent. So when you said, do all those other bells and whistles matter? My honest answer is they don't matter if your compensation strategy isn't good and you don't have comprehensive, flexible benefits that people need. And this just blows my mind because, I referred earlier to I do employee engagement surveys for my clients. The number one thing that comes out every time I do a brand new survey for a new company, I've been doing this 20 years, is the compensation is not good and the benefits are not good. And then what happens? I sit down with the leaders and everyone disagrees. And I get a ton of pushback and everybody cringes and nobody wants to give more money. And I'm just like, hold on a minute here. Have you even done a compensation analysis? Like, do you even know if what you think is in line with reality? And everybody's hesitant, everybody's nervous. And I'm just like, okay, pause on that for a minute. I get it. I want you to look at your HR budget and tell me everything else you're doing and how much all that costs. Because I know I have clients where it was like, we have a $70,000 recognition program, but we don't pay a living wage. Where's the disconnect? So Maslow is clear. Unless people's physiological needs are met, compensation, living wage, benefits. So
Yeah.
this is just the starting point. Compensation strategy, benefits plan, foundation. So most of my new clients, that's number one, clean it up. And then guess what? They clean it up. I
Put it
and
out
they
there.
move on. Then it would up the Maslow.
Yeah, we move up the Maslow. Something I've heard is that it's never enough. You can give them more money, you can give them more benefits, and it's never enough. Do you agree? Disagree?
Not true at all. Not true at all.
Awesome. Okay.
And not true. And I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it. I've seen it till the cows come home. And then here's the other one, right? Debbie, of course, everyone's going to say compensation isn't good. I was like, oh, really? Because I actually have clients who this year scored 85% on compensation. When we first did their survey, they were in the 60s.
Mm.
But as they cleaned it up and then they had honest, transparent communication with people about the cleaning up, guess what? Everyone's perspective on it changed over time.
Yeah, you know what? And I had to ask the question, but that's actually been my experience too. Yes, there are sometimes an outlier that like, they've looked at one job posting and they're like, "This, I'm not paid enough," but the majority uh, are. They get it. They are, and they do accept their wages.
But that's also, Andrea, because companies that do a good job with pay transparency
Mm.
earn people's trust and respect.
Yes, yes, yes.
Right?
So
We're not hiding it. It's like, "Hey, we did a salary survey, and guess what? We realized we've got a couple of departments that need to get caught up here, and here's our actual plan and strategy of how we're gonna do that. We're gonna phase it in over a couple of years." So that's the other fear, I think, when people, even are afraid to do engagement surveys. And can I also just say, there is so much resistance to having an outside third party person do your engagement survey. I can't tell you how many times I've come up against that, right? Where someone said, no. What is that about? So
I don't know what is that about.
I'll tell you, they don't want the truth because, again, my experience and the research is clear. When an outside third party person does your engagement survey, you can see as high as a 20% decrease in your scores.
Yikes!
Like, at least just pay someone like you or me outside where people trust it, where people feel safe, where it really feels anonymous and confidential because it is. And then get the honest data because you can't fix what you don't know. And lots of companies have blind spots. And again, I'm sorry, but why? Because leaders have blind spots. And why? You and I know this. Unfortunately, a lot of leaders have big egos. All about the ego. And the ego lies. And the ego's job is to protect itself. So it
Yeah,
doesn't want to
okay.
see its blind spots. And I'm just like, you can't help people like that.
Well, this is so funny. What did I say out there, people? I said we were gonna get some version of straight talk, and it's so straight, it's hilarious. Okay. Mindful that
Yeah, you could an agenda. I'm gonna behave now. Carry on.
no, don't. I don't want you to, except that I am mindful of time and I wanna cover as much as we can.
Mm,
I will encourage people to, is there anything else that you absolutely have to say about Maslow's hierarchy of needs before we move on to something else?
right. Yeah, because I mean, I won't get into it in as much detail, but we landed just on the first level.
Yeah.
So then we move on to safety. And I'm going to say, and this is great news, and I think a lot of your listeners will feel validated, is that I think almost all of my clients have really high physical safety scores. So they're somewhere over 80%. Where we fall off the rails is psychological safety.
Yeah.
So, that's also at the second level. And so now all of a sudden, right, let's just pause. How many people, and I started teaching HR folks in COVID about the new national standard. There's 13 factors of psychological safety.
Yeah.
Andrea, a lot of HR folks that I teach are like, what? I've never even heard of it. So for anyone who's listening, you need to learn this.
And I've done an episode on it, and I will link to it at the end. Yeah.
Yeah, perfect. And now we advance up the food chain. So what comes after that is what we call love belonging. How does that translate in the world of work? That's all DEI,
Mm.
right? Onboarding and what? Team building, team development, relationship management. So where's the disconnect, Andrea? Because I am not saying that those things aren't important. But what I am saying is a lot of my clients have prioritized those topics ahead of the ones I've just mentioned, which are actually more meaningful, impactful, and necessary. And then they're wondering why all their efforts aren't sticking.
Okay. We're two from the top now.
Okay. The next one is esteem. And so, what's esteem? Training, recognition, performance management, coaching, feedback. So, again, pause. Lots of money, lots of time spent in a lot of my clients' businesses on things like training, performance management, recognition. Great. And is it sticking? Is it having the impact? Because if it's not, you've got to back up the bus. So, and we get to self actualization. That's success. That's career growth. That's promotion. That's career development, right? That's the outcome. That's what we should be seeing. So, if we're seeing it, right, then we go, okay. I would even say one person at a time. You should be, as a leader in your coaching conversations, asking questions to find out. If I was coaching you, if you were my employee, Andrea, I'd be going up Maslow's hierarchy, finding out, is this need being met for you?
Yeah.
And then, right, next level, is this need being met for you?
So we back to the 80% that leaders are responsible for. We've already talked, in HR, we're going to do the comp and benefits, but the leaders, what can HR do to enable the leaders to take ownership and action on their 80% of employee engagement?
So I love that because that's one of my favorite things to do, which is give them training. So one of the things again, like when I first engage with a company and it's like, okay, I'll do your survey for you. But then the first action at the end where we get the results and we, sit leaders down, give them the results, but we also give them training just on the topic of employee engagement because in fairness, they don't understand it. So we start at the beginning and we go through with them about Maslow and we teach them about the national standard for psych safety. And then we ask them, what do they think their role is? Because the research says that your role is 80%. And so if your role is 80%, what is your role? And I love it because I get them all chatting with each other. And then they come back to me and tell me. And they say, our role is to, right? Champion this, Debbie. And our role is to lead by example. And our role is to celebrate success. And our role is to make sure that our people are getting paid a living wage and advocate for them. And our role is to give feedback to like HR and to management around the things that aren't working for our people. Our role is to create psychological safety and ensure physical safety is being met. Right? So you do all the teaching up front and then in the end you're like, "So, okay people, the research says you have an 80% impact. So, what do you think you're responsible for?" And now they have some ownership over it.
So I have to ask the question around Maslow's hierarchy of needs.
I am.
People get theoretical and they debunk it and then they throw the baby out with the bathwater and they're like, Maslow, that doesn't matter anymore. It's been debunked. We shouldn't use it. What is your response to that?
Okay, so it's been debunked. I mean, I am a bit confused with that comment only because if I run the surveys I've been doing for 20 years and I just pretend I don't know Maslow and I look at where what categories score the lowest, it all matches Maslow.
Mm.
And then when we clean up those lower level needs, which are in fact people's highest priorities,
Yeah.
everything else starts to get better. Like it's been through the experience of seeing it that I'm more convinced now than ever, right? And then think, here's my other thing. Whenever someone debunks something, and I don't know if you're like this,
Well,
I
maybe they,
curious. I get so curious. Because to me, that's resistance. And I'm like, understand where that's coming from. And of course, a business owner is going to debunk Maslow because at the end of the day, they don't want to have to pay people more money or pay more for benefits. Sometimes that's the barrier because it's some kind of personal consequence.
Well, or we get so,
Yeah.
intellectual about the models that we're like, I can't use that one because it's not perfect. I can't use that one because it's not perfect. And then we are like,
What?
and we're not, and whatever we're going to isn't creating better results. Like we're wasting time.
And again, what I would say for anyone who's debunking it, then I'm just like, do a survey and see.
Or, maybe debunking was a wrong word. Maybe the word I should have used was challenge. They're challenging the
Yeah.
foundation, and so that they do not, like you say, have to listen to the message. Okay. We're down the wire here. Where can someone contact you, or learn more about any of the concepts you've talked about?
Yeah. So I'm always happy to chat with people. And I always say conversations are free, right? For me, they're free. And so I'm onestophr.ca. There's a
Okay.
couple other companies, One Stop HR, but I'm onestophr.ca. And then, yeah, Debbie Pearmain. So happy to reach out on LinkedIn, right? Debbie Pearmain, onestophr.ca. And my emails are on there, my phone number. So I'd love to just chat and see. I often just look at people's engagement survey and give them a free, like,
Oh,
let me just tell you how I would fix it. And then they can decide, oh, do they want to do it or do they want me to do it for them? So sometimes that's a good starting point, right?
right. Okay. All right. I'll put all links to that in the show notes. Well, thanks, Debbie. That was just as refreshing and maybe even more refreshing than I remembered. I love that. There's just so many takeaways, but I think the overarching one is don't overcomplicate it, people. However, we can't talk about it anymore. We've reached the end of the episode. So thanks for listening out there, and we will catch you next time when I talk with another amazing guest.